everyone. Thank you for coming to our Fountain Street Church Screen Club panel for Pose. We're super excited you're here. Give yourselves a round of applause. You've made it to the last panel of the day. Woo! And then give our panelists an applause for being here after many other commitments today. This is a busy week for everybody, so thank you all for being here. I'm actually going to let you all go down the line and introduce yourselves and let everyone know who you are.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dice Santana. I am a drag king here around the Grand Rapids area, and I've been performing for about almost 9 years now.
Hi. My name's Carlos. I use they, them, theirs pronouns. I am an executive board member for the Grand Rapids Trans Foundation. I'm a film and video major. I like watching things, and I'm going to pretend I can see all of you right now, because the only thing I can see is like the bright star of the projector right in front of my eyes. Hello. That's all I have to say. Bye.
Hi, I'm Electra. I am a drag performer in West Michigan. I'm also an advocate for the HQ Foundation and a hostess and MC for Michigan Drag Brunch. I identify as male 100%, but when I'm in drag, I use she pronouns.
I used to work for HQ.
I know. I met you there.
Cool. Hi. Hey, everyone, surprise.
Hi, Sarah.
Hello, I am Sarah Naraki. Woo! Used to be Vesley, but as of a week ago, Naraki.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How much did it cost?
Well, let's not talk about
Yeah,
that.
same.
No, we're not getting into that. So I am the director of Wealthy Theater, and I'm also a professor at Grand Valley and Campus of film studies, screenwriting, all that good stuff. Yeah.
And I'm also here supporting Beauty Beyond Drag with Bradley Haas as well.
Oh, wonderful. Yay. Also, make sure you stay afterward because there's a lot of tables of organizations in the lobby. Make sure you go visit them. Get a button, get a sticker, give them money. See, I told you I would tell people that. Yes. I was going to work it in organically, and now I've just made it like a Vanna White moment. So my name is Virginia. I think I said that at the beginning. If I didn't, I'm Virginia Ansengruber. I work at Fountain Street Church. I'm the content and communications manager, and I'm kind of the co-pilot, as it were, for this Screen Club series that we do at Fountain Street. Over the last few months, we started over the summer, and we take TV shows that maybe you know and love or have heard of and not watched, and we give you the opportunity to talk about them like you would with a book club, because we live in 2019, and who's to say that a television show can't have as big or as deep of an impact creatively, culturally, and societally as television can. And so that's really the impetus of the series. We've done, oh goodness, we did Shrill, Orange is the New Black. We did, help me, Sarah.
Handmaid's Tale?
Yes, Handmaid's Tale. Lots of light comedies, just back to back to back. And then most recently, we did Stranger Things as a part of the Thriller Chiller Film Festival that just happened. And then right before that, we did Schitt's Creek, which was so fun. Yeah, it was, oh my God. Yeah, it was great. And so we're really excited you guys are all here. And I am going to just be moderating the panel. I have very little working knowledge of the show other than the technical aspects. So you might hear me chime in with my little filmmaker nerdiness. But other than that, I'm just going to let our panelists speak. So the first thing I would love to talk about, if we can. Oh, actually, special thanks to our sponsors, the Grand Rapids Trans Foundation. Hooray! They have a table out there. Seriously, give them your money. They need help, and they also support a lot of people in the community. You all just started doing the micro grants for name changes as well, which is completely donation-based, right?
Certainly.
Yeah,
Everything we do is completely donation-based. I can speak a little more about that at some point. Oh, you want me to do it now? Okay. Hi, everybody. So what is the Grand Rapids Trans Foundation? Basically, our mission is to provide resources for the Grand Rapids trans community. And that's a super broad mission, right? Like, what does that mean? Basically, in short terms, we want to give money to trans people. That's it, plain and simple. We are a historically underserved population, especially if you count like trans people who have intersecting identities, like being people of color, being neurodivergent, people who have disabilities, who already have a really hard time finding money and a place to exist in a place like Grand Rapids. We started working with grants. So the major thing that we do is we provide grants for trans people to go to college and have a little bit of an easier time paying for college. Those happen every single year. So if you know any trans people who are going through college, and it doesn't have to be like a college, it could be a beauty school, technical school, we really don't care as long as we get to give them money. The second thing that we do that we started is understanding that not every trans person goes to college. Sometimes colleges are just extremely economically unviable, and by sometimes I mean all the time. So we realize that there are bigger needs that the trans community faces, one of them being changing your documents, so namely changing your name. I don't know if y'all know, if you recently got married or if you've ever gotten married, the name change process is free. For a trans person, the name change process costs upwards to $300 to $400 that they have to pay for entirely themselves. So we don't like that. And again, as I mentioned, we like giving trans people money. So we started a series of workshops where we tell people what it looks like to go through the extremely difficult process of changing your name, and we give them money so they can do that. This year, we've had 20 people who were able to get funded to go to court. They got legal representation through a lawyer who did pro bono work, and by the end of the year, all of them will have their names changed. Many of them will not have paid a single cent towards that. And that's all entirely thank you. But really, none of that work would happen if we didn't get money from people like you. So if you're cis in any way and you feel any sort of guilt, take that guilt and turn it into dollars. We really want your money. I want you to think about, especially as we think about this panel, which is very deeply and like intrinsically based around the experiences of people who did drag, many of whom identified as trans, for whom drag was the only way to express transness, especially people of color. If you like this show at all and it made you feel guilty or some type of way inside, turn that guilt into dollars. We're right out there, we take card, and we will take your money.
Well, I'll take that.
And thanks for coming to our event. No. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you for supporting. And go give them your money. I can't say it any better. So the first topic that I'd like to get into that I'll just throw to the panel is the concept of houses in Pose and sort of this idea of like the chosen family. I think this is a really interesting narrative concept to explore, but this also being a show that is based around a culture and a time period and a history that did exist. Like it is, in essence, a sort of dramatic retelling of an actual time that I wouldn't want to say biopic, but what does that idea of chosen family and the house culture, what does that mean to you? Can we talk a little bit more about it and the history of it as it relates to ball culture? And I'll give you this mic, but don't feel like you have to talk first.
I'll start if you want to. So houses, for a lot of us, especially, thank goodness, I don't think you belong to a house, do you?
No, I just
Okay.
I'm in my own.
Okay, no, that's fair. No,
I
that's
have
great.
a lot of family.
No,
though.
honestly, that's great. As a member of the gay community, I was raised in a very, very conservative family. We were Lutheran, which is diet Catholic. It's like all the flavor, half the guilt, right? So when I came out of the closet, my parents, to my surprise, were not so fazed, probably because they had known me my entire life, and there was really no hiding it in any way, shape, or form. But when I came out as wanting to be a drag queen and an entertainer, it was too much for them, and they literally threw me out of the house. One of the reasons that I'm an advocate for the HQ Foundation as aggressively as I am is because I was one of the young people who was thrown aside by their family to make their way very, very young, way younger than I ever should have in real life. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I was homeless. I had no job. I was trying to get through school. I was still in high school. I think I was a freshman. It was a really, really scary time, and I didn't know what to do. And I met my first ever drag queen I was completely entranced. I loved the art. I loved the performance. I loved the theater. I have a theater background. And she took me in, and she adopted me as her child. And for me, that meant so much more than just teaching me how to do drag and teaching me the art of performance. She literally took me into her home. She took me off the street. She didn't make me work. She allowed me to just continue going, to school and to better myself, because she knew that I needed to complete these things. And a lot of drag houses were born out of necessity. We were thrown aside because of who we are. And whether it be because you're transgendered, whether it's because you're gay, whether it's because you're lesbian, bisexual, anything, we were literally discarded and left to our own devices. And for a young person, there's really just no way to do that. So a drag house for me was so much more than just learning performance. It was literally a house. It was literally a family. We took care of each other. We were a group of misfits, if you will, or undesirables. And we helped each other survive, whether it be providing food, whether it be providing this, that, and the other thing. But we also became a family. I found the love that I never thought that I would ever find again, because the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally showed me that there were conditions, and that because I was being authentic to who I was, that I was no longer lovable. And that is devastating to a young person. So houses are a lot more, I know in the TV show Pose, you see them competing against each other, and a lot of that is to get the accolades, to get the esteem that a lot of us are lacking. A lot of us don't feel desired, don't feel desired, don't feel wanted, don't feel valued, and it's a way to not only work together and to build as a team, but it's also a way to get that acknowledgement and that recognition that we so desperately crave. I literally would not be alive without my drag house. And like Dice said, he particularly does not belong to a house. And I think that that's wonderful, to be honest, because that to me says that your experience didn't mean that you needed one. And I think that is a blessing in itself. But I myself, I have several drag children, and I am there unconditionally for them. I mean, I get phone calls at 3 o'clock in the morning when they don't know what I do, and I really try to answer the phone. But for me, it's passing the torch. It's helping the next person, because if we don't have each other, some of us don't have anything at all. And without my drag family, I would not be alive. So anybody that I bring in to my family, I try to do the same. I try to pass it and, pay it forward, if you will. So that, to me, that's why drag houses are so vital.
Yeah, I want to give some more context to what you were saying. LGBTQIA people are 4 times as likely to become homeless in comparison to their non-LGBTQIA peers. But also, within the first 24 hours of homelessness, they're more likely to be approached for either coercive sex work or for human trafficking, especially in Grand Rapids. This is unfortunate, right? So I want to just kind of give that context as we talk about that in the scope of where we are right now. But also, when we think about Pose, I come from a queer theory and a queer history background. We have to think about the place where Pose happens. Pose happens in New York in 1989, right? So it is at the cusp of this 80s to 90s space where all the things that Dia is mentioning were happening. And a lot of people felt like they had to flock to the major cities where they were seeing emergent or thriving queer communities, right? But we also have to think about the fact that the AIDS crisis was at full swing during the late 80s. It was a very important time for LGBTQIA people to find community with themselves because honestly, we were dying. Many people who literally are not here with us today and whose voices and histories and amazing times were squandered and lost only were able to find community within drag houses, within their own people, because there was literally nowhere else where they were accepted. many people were turned away from hospitals because nurses were literally afraid to like treat people with HIV for fear of contracting HIV, and they had to be taken care of in their own homes by their own people, often with access to like, and you see this in Pose, but like I promise that for everything you see in Pose, there's like, for every one person you see, there's like hundreds who you don't, who are unfortunately not here to tell their own stories. Sarah Schulman wrote this book called The Gentrification of the Mind, which is very important to think about when we think about Pose, which is a book about the commodification of LGBTQIA culture, the commodification of things like drag, all of which come from this space of trying to kind of erase the AIDS crisis and glamorize LGBTQIA experience. The way we think of AIDS is that happened and then it stopped and we're all good now, but it didn't. It didn't stop. It in fact just got swept under the rug. We forgot that our own government literally told us that we weren't worth living, that our own people told us we weren't worth existing. And Sarah Schulman argues that we should not forget, that we should not allow people to forget. Pose, I think, has a really interesting place in our community as we analyze houses, as we analyze belonging, to remind us about that, to remind us to not forget, to remind us these are things that happened in our own history that we don't even talk about. So I think as we think of houses, as we think of belonging, it's important to kind of like also think of the commodification of that, right? Like what culture do we live in that a show like Pose can even be made and be profitable, right? And how does that maybe invisibilize all the years that houses existed, that drag houses existed, and there was no show like Pose to represent them. That's all I got.
Well, that just makes me think of a question that isn't really in the slides, but in talking about this, how do you all feel, and I'll start with you, but how do you feel about a show like Pose being something that is mainstream, which one of the things that we're planning on talking about later is how the idea of like voguing and that sort of dance style was appropriated by Madonna, then it became mainstream, and then the sort of culture that it represented was not shown in the same light or given the same respect, and so in tying it all into that, how do you all feel about the show even being on and having multiple seasons and being made by someone like Ryan Murphy, who has 18 other shows on right now? I'm not sure what season of American Horror Story they're on now, but it's a lot. So how do you all feel about that?
For me, I feel that Pose is I think it's good. I think that I'm glad that it's out because it's actually showing people certain things that they aren't used to. Being here in Grand Rapids, being in Lansing, we don't have ballroom. We don't have things like that. But if you go out to Detroit, Chicago, over in the other, Virginia, out there in those areas, they all have them. So bringing it here and putting it on TV is actually giving people the idea of what they're actually missing, what they actually are trying to pretty much understand of what ballroom is. So by it being out on TV and people expressing, what they've been through, getting out of an abandoned house or, being in the system, and then actually finding a place that they can feel comfortable and, be themselves to go out and do what they want to do is actually a good thing that it is out there, because in Pose, it hits a lot of key points on family, on being who you should be as a human being, and showing what support and love is all about and guidance.
I agree. And like my dear friend right here just said in the last question, I feel like Pose in particular is helping us not forget, right? I agree that even in our upcoming generations, the HIV AIDS epidemic scare is being forgotten. Now we have amazing advancements in HIV preparation, protection. We have knowledge. It's something that we take for granted. But the reality is that a lot of people lost their lives to pave the way for us, and they should not be forgotten. They should not be swept under the rug. They should not be disregarded. Thank you very much. And I think that Pose, yes, of course, it centers on ballroom, but it really touches base on so many other things, whether it be family, whether it be I think the entire, really, truly, I think that Pose centers around the desire to be valued, appreciated, and belonging. I think that's really, for me, that's what I get out of the show a lot more than ballroom. And I think that that's something that as a human race, we can identify with. And I know kind of with what Dice said, you know, the ballroom scene may not be thriving and prevalent here in Grand Rapids, and as a result of that, and even in places where it is, it's usually more underground. It's usually at night, it's usually tucked away, and it has been for a while. And I think bringing it to the forefront shows the experience that all of these people have had, that a lot of the viewers are completely oblivious to, right? Either, you know, as a straight person, you know, in today's society, it's something that they may not even be aware of, and to no fault of their own, genuinely. It's just not their experience. It's not something that they can relate with. It's not what they identify with. I think it's important to showcase the stories of the people who paved the way for us, especially as the gay community is making such amazing strides with the legalization of gay marriage, with, you know, just kind of everything. I mean, even simple things like being able to donate blood. We're working towards lifting the ban on that for the gay community. And as we're making all of these strides, you see a lot of backlash from people who don't understand why the need is. You hear a lot about the gay community wanting extra rights or special rights. That's not what we're here for. We're trying to get equal rights, and a lot of people are just unaware of how unequal things have been for so long because it's all been sugar glazed over and it's just not part of their experience. So like I said, I don't blame anybody, but I'm applauding Ryan Murphy, A, for bringing it to the forefront, and B, for doing such a thorough job researching and not just mass producing something and throwing it on the screen without knowing anything of what he's talking about. The reason that the show resonates and the reason that it is doing what it's doing is because it's very well researched. It's very authentic, and I think it's incredibly sincere. Quite frankly, I'm blown away that the person who wrote Glee and American Horror Story and all of these series has gone into such great lengths to do research and to break boundaries and cast a trans cast rather than casting a cis cast playing transgendered people. I think that that is invaluable because transgendered people have not been represented in the media. And I can't tell you how many movies from the 80s, 90s, and beyond have transgender characters that are played by cis actors. And the transgender community has just been pushed aside still. So being able to bring these authentic stories and these amazing actors into the limelight, I think is invaluable.
Yes. For me, it's more of a bittersweet thing. I loved the first season of Pose. I cried when it ended, mostly because it ended in such a joyous note, and I was ready for somebody to just die tragically. I'm so ready for, like, especially from Ryan Murphy. I was like, someone's gonna die tragically. They're gonna I loved how joyous it was. I cried because it made me happy. Still, I really start thinking about stuff like Paris is Burning and how that brought with it this kind of commodification of ballroom culture that leads to a show like Pose being made. I think about RuPaul's Drag Race. Like, this is the environment in which we are releasing a show like Pose, in which drag and trans experience, for that matter, have been commodified, right? There's so many shows that are basically like drag for non-drag people, trans for non-trans people, queer for non-queer people. And it's amazing to see a show that's kind of made for, that in many ways we can claim, right? We can look at it and be like, this show I can read and interpret as a show that's made for trans people, almost specifically for trans people of color, right? As a trans person of color, especially as a trans femme, I love this. However, I always ask myself, like, what are straight people getting out of this? You know, like, when straight people stop watching the show, when they get up and go through their lives, what are they applying from this? Are they gendering the trans people in their lives, and there definitely are trans people in their lives, correctly? Are they supporting local trans organizations? Are they supporting their drag culture and their drag scene in their towns? Are they supporting people of color? Are they supporting the things that these people need, i.e. global healthcare, homes, access to like Planned Parenthood and testing? Are these things being supported? Because otherwise what you did is you watched a show, you made you feel good, and then you went and like, there are actually, like Pose isn't just fiction. There are people, you know? Like, I wake up every single day in my fucking trans ass body, and I have to get up and be ogled by people who literally don't know how to gender me. Trans performers have to like leave venues sometimes like in full makeup because they have another venue to go to and face overwhelming amounts of possible violence, you know? Nobody wants to have to deal with that. And it's hard for me to think about that I might literally be lying, and I'm sorry to get morbid here, but it's really hard for me to think about that I might get murdered on the street and somebody might see me and not help me, and that person watched the entirety of Pose and felt good about it. So yeah, Pose is great, but Pose is ultimately media. And we need to get past like what the message of consumption is and maybe go towards the thesis. Like yes, I love that you got the thesis, but can you put that into praxis? That's what I do with the Trans Foundation. That's what I did with HQ. That's why I really think that it's important to put action to words. So as we sit here in an organization and a festival that's predominantly attended to and staffed by white women, specifically white cis women, it's important to think about what are you going to do when you get out of this post panel to support the queer and trans people of color and folks who exist in your community who are underserved. Otherwise, you just wasted your own time and, frankly, everybody else's. So that's what Pose makes me feel when I finish watching it and the credits are rolling. And I feel all that really fast. And then I go, damn, I want to watch that again and not think this hard about it. So sometimes, yes, I love thinking hard about things. Other times, I just want to fucking enjoy something. That's my both and. I am both angry and I want to enjoy Pose for what it is.
I think one of the things that you said really quick is that you enjoyed the first season. You didn't say that you didn't enjoy the second one. But for me, I think that Pose, but I just kind of drew my own line. The second season, I kind of assumed, right? So in my opinion, I really think Pose has done an incredible job because in past shows, we've had shows with gay representation, but it's like Will and Grace, right? Where it's like, oh, those funny gays. Or you have a character who is gay or is transgendered. They're the comedic relief. That's what they are. We've been used as clowns in media for so many years. You know, oh, that unrelatable gay person. Oh, that unrelatable trans person. They say the darndest things. I think that Pose draws the seriousness in. And I think season 1 was very good at laying out the fundamentals of what houses are, how the culture was formed, how it works, how it operates. I think that season 2 really focuses on how the outside world views the ballroom scene, how it views the transgendered community, whether it be the landlord. I'm not trying, no spoiler alerts, I'm so sorry if you haven't seen the second one. But Blanca opens her own business and her landlord is incredibly transphobic. And the way that she's treated, I think, really reflects the way that the outside world treats us. I think the first one was how we treat each other. I think the second one is how the outside world treats us. So in my opinion, I think that I like the second season better. I really do. I think that it has a more valuable message, especially for the heterosexual community who is watching, the viewers who are watching, because I think it takes the humor out and it shows the seriousness of the way that our community has been treated and downtrodden and belittled and abused and neglected for so many years. To me, I think that the second season is the meat of what we've been exposed to with this show so far.
I haven't seen the second season, so, but I feel like I have. If you want to, I don't have FX. If y'all want to pay me to have FX, $1 for.
I'll give you my Netflix subscription.
Worm.
I got you.
Okay, but yeah, I haven't seen the second season. I feel like I have to now. Yeah. Again, if anybody wants to pay me to watch it, I'm right here.
I would say in the second season there.
I saw a hand go up.
Give Dice the mic.
What's up?
Okay, so from Maryland. I'm Dicey's girlfriend. Yes. I've been in ballroom myself for almost 12 years.
Work.
Just kind of like, I like what everybody's saying and stuff like that, but nowadays, polls kind of gives what ballroom gave back in the 80s and the 90s.
Correct.
Now, me coming into the scene, I was 15 when I came out, and then by the time I was 17, turning 18 when I graduated from high school is when I actually entered into ballroom. Ballroom itself it still has that family-oriented style that you really want, but then on top of that, it also has whereas the people really want that trophy.
Right.
They want that grand prize. So you have a split of wherever you are. So if you live in New York, you may have a house that is still family-oriented, right. But then in South Carolina, it's more based about trophies.
Right.
So it could be in the same house. So depending on where you are, you know who you are, because a lot of times now and with houses, it's a little different, and the family-oriented aspect sometimes come from who you are around, who you know. Right. So my gay family started with my cousin's boyfriend, and that's how my gay family started. Now we so happen to be in the same house, but we have family and sisters and brothers and aunts and uncles who are in other houses. Right. So that's where another part of the family aspect. Yeah, that's where another part of the family aspect comes from. But it's still now based upon who can do this and who can do that, and what can you bring to this house that will help us win a grand prize. So
Absolutely, and I think that's awesome. I think that kind of touches base a little bit, forgive me if you disagree, on what I was talking about earlier about the necessity of houses, right? I love to hear that houses are in different areas focused more on the competition. That to me says that there's not the necessity necessarily for survival. You know what I mean? And like you said, they're still very family oriented. And I think that competition, again, really, it's the accolades, right? You want that grand prize. You want the reward. You want the fame, the spotlight, all of those things. And I think that that's important, especially for a community that's been told by society for so long, you're worthless, you're trash, you should be thrown away, you should be dead in a dumpster, which happens ungodly often amounts of time. I mean, I can't, even since our presidential office has taken place, I can't tell you how many transgendered people have been murdered. It's 2019, and this is still happening. This isn't slowing down. It's still happening every day. The difference is that we're hearing about it instead of the news media not even covering it because it's just another transgendered person and we don't care. That's bullshit. That is 100% bullshit. So for the first time ever, we're actually hearing about it. And I hope that, like you were saying, I hope that this inspires people to get into action and to do something about it rather than just talk about it. Talking is great to help open minds, but if it's not followed with action, it's pointless.
Or just watching a show.
Right.
Yep.
Period.
What is the grand prize? I guess
So with ballroom scene, there are different categories that you are. Have you seen the show at all? Okay, cool. That's totally fine. There are different categories that you walk, similar-ish to a pageant system, if you will. I use that very loosely, however.
It actually started from pageant.
Correct. But it's evolved into its own thing. Agreed? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so if you think of like the Miss America pageant, there are different categories, right? Swimsuit, stuff like that. Each house is almost like a team, if you will, a family, and they will be represented in certain categories. And then a panel of judges will give them scores. And the winner wins a trophy, a prize, a title, if you will, and kind of the bragging rights and the esteem that comes with that. Does that answer your question? Okay, so grand prize would be like the winner, if you will. Yeah.
So I watched Paris is Burning, and I thought that was such a great documentary. And when I watched Pose, I kind of in my head thought it was like, oh, that's something that happened in the 80s and 90s. Are houses and is that culture still alive and well?
Oh, it's well alive.
Absolutely.
All over.
Absolutely.
The same?
You said, is it the same?
Well, society is different from the 80s and 90s. And anything like that is going to evolve naturally. Houses are not just an immediate house as is portrayed in Pose. A house can have chapters, like you were saying earlier, that can span over the entire United States, over the entire world. And there will be kind of a team captain, if you will, who will go out and start another branch, become a mother within the same house. A house does not just have one mother. Some do. Some are smaller. Some really, really branch out, especially some of the long-standing, more established houses.
I was going to say, you can catch, like, for instance, Electra, she's her own damn house. I've seen these queens do their whole damn thing.
House of Spook.
You get these different cliques, like the House of Divine, for instance.
Mhm.
They're up and coming
Right.
in the drag scene.
Mhm.
And just like, it's nice to see cliques start going into that. What do you guys think of that?
For me, I feel like being into in a clique is very too cliquey, because you get stuck into that one house, and then you can't venture off and see what other houses are all about because you're just too busy worried about your one house. As like Electra said, I don't have a house. I'm in my own house, House of Santana. And I've been doing this for almost 10 years. So for myself, I feel like all the other houses out there are my houses. Because I pretty much call myself, Uncle Daddy to everybody in the family.
Yeah.
So I'm like the uncle to everybody. And then everybody, I'm the dad. How you guys doing? I'll give you some advice if you need it. But other than that, it's just too much because it gets too cliquey. And then the clickiness becomes into being in drama. Drama is very big around. And I feel as if you're going to be in a house for a purpose. Be in a house because you see somebody who needs help. You see somebody who's crying out for a family who hasn't, had that motherly or fatherly love to give them that advice to keep them pushing on. As you see others out here that don't have families, they're doing their own things as far as trafficking and, working, certain things like that. And that's not what's going to get you where you want to be in life. It's just going to make you go home or go wherever you are at that time and say, damn, I'm back where I started when I woke up. Until somebody actually sees you and says, I see that potential in you. I see that you can do this, you can do that. Come into my house. Let me give you some advice. Let me guide you. Let me take you up under my wing and show you so that way you can build your heart up and go off and build your own family, but with this in the same business, in the same entertainment, with this same family. You're doing your own thing because somebody taught you, somebody is showing you the ropes, the way to being a successful person in your drag, in your ballroom scene, or in your career.
I think you just nailed it, like 100%. My house, if you will, is a performance-based house. We are not voguers. Half of us don't even have rhythm. Just saying. However, what I will say is my children, if you will, I have like 4, 5, somewhere in there. I don't even know. My goal from day one is I find somebody who is hungry for it, who desires it, and needs guidance, needs help, whether they come from a broken family, whether they come from just a hungry theater kid who just wants to do something. But I say from day one, I see it in you. I want to help you. Let's do this. I will help you as much as you will help yourself. And like every other parent, my goal is to kick your ass out of the nest as soon as possible. And baby, I will teach you to fly, but you got to take those wings and fly somewhere else. I have a daughter who now lives in California. I have another one in Chicago. And I have another one who is still local. Drag houses are changing with the times, like we said to you. But I think it's the goal for every parent, period, whether it be a biological parent, a drag parent, a house mother, father, any of that. I think it is our goal and our agenda and our duty to set our children up for failure, or not for failure, I'm so sorry, to set our children up for success. and they carry the legacy, they carry the torch. And just as somebody helped me, I feel obligated to help the next person. So depending on how close I help you as to whether or not I consider you a daughter, however, I think it's important. We want our children to fly further than we did. That's the goal, right? It shouldn't end with me. It shouldn't end with a house mother. It's all about the legacy and growing and changing. So I think you brought up a really good point when you said, is this changing with the times? Absolutely. It's getting stronger. It's getting better. Voguing is elevated now to a point where Pose, ain't nobody on Pose gonna get a grand prize today, baby. Like, I'm gonna tell you that right now. Laomi is really like the godmother of Vogue right now, and the things that she's capable of doing and the things that her children and the people that she mentors and she teaches classes, that it is elevated so far because every generation carries that torch a little closer, a little further, a little, brighter. And so yes, absolutely, it's evolving, it's changing. That's what pop culture does. That's what gay culture does. That's what straight culture, that's just culture. It's continuously growing. If not, how boring.
Yeah, right, because if it's not growing, because each day, each week, each year, each month, whatever you want to, however you want to look at it, somebody is always bringing something new to a house. If you're bringing something new, that's the it thing. So once somebody's bringing something, they can come up with a whole nother category. And then that's a whole new category right there. And then somebody else can be, it's a continuous thing. It's just like each and every year, like we say, every time, something's always changing within each year. Something's always changing. Yes, it's getting much stronger. And eventually, we're going to see how strong it gets. It's going to be all over. Not just Pose, they're going to have it everywhere. It's going to be a sport, I guarantee you. Just like, everything is a sport. Art is a sport because we're out here, we're shedding blood, sweat, and tears. We're putting our creative minds to something that a lot of people in this world can't do. We're expressing ourselves through music, through ballroom, voguing, through what we are wearing, through what we are performing. By expressing ourselves is actually opening up the crowd's eyes and mind to what they're so closed-minded to. If I'm out performing a song, it's because I'm feeling something that day. I'm going through something, so I'm gonna perform what I'm feeling, and who's to say somebody in the audience can be going through that same feeling. And that way you just change somebody's life right then and there, and you never know it. You never know it.
I have nothing to add in terms of experience because, again, I have nothing that I can contribute here, but I think what I heard that I've kind of been developing in my mind as I think about your question of is ball culture different? Is ball culture still there? It's really kind of going back to that point of we had this Paris is Burning, the Madonna Vogue video, everybody's like, and then it's like this great forgetting. All of a sudden, queer people are Will and Grace, this heteronormative idea of like queer people are just like straight people except they're not straight, which is highly reductive of the amazing amounts of experience that queer people have and own. Even our depictions of ball culture almost completely forget that there's like all these gender non-conforming performers where you sit down and you can't immediately think is this a drag queen or a drag king. All I'm seeing is a cyborg with a 12-inch dildo as nipples, and which is amazing in its own right,
Just the balance work alone.
Do you know how hard 12-inch dildos are to have as nipples? I do. So
It was an awkward Christmas.
it was, yeah. Oh gosh, I opened that gift and woohoo. Too bad her eyebrows never grew back, huh? So anyway, I guess what I'm hearing is this there was a gap, right? And all of a sudden we're seeing this resurgence of thinking about ball culture, but it's all in the service of that still late 80s snapshot, right? We're still looking at ball culture as like it was in the 80s. And now it's less of a documentary and more of a looking back at. Still not acknowledging that these people survived through the whole 90s, right? Through the AIDS crisis, through the 2000s, ball culture was still happening. We see it right here, we see it right here, we see it right here. And yet we don't hear anything about it, right? The fact that you have to ask that question tells me that it's basically invisible. So now that we have posed, now that we have these questions coming up, and again, sorry to bring it back into action, I'm an activist and that's what I do. What are we going to do to prevent the next forgetting? What are we going to do to prevent the next like heteronormative idea of what queer people are or trans people are? What are we going to do to defend people who don't fit those ideas, who are always going to keep facing violence and oppression because they don't even fit the mold of what we think gay and trans people should look like? I think we deserve to do better and to look deeper into like, what does ball culture look like now? What does LGBTQIA culture look like now? How has it changed and how has it actually stayed the same? Because many of the things we talk about that are like, yeah, trans people have rights, trans people are very visible, they've been there, you know? We've been doing this shit. Non-binary people have been around since like the fucking 60s and even longer beforehand. Of course, we've been here the whole time. And so to see this lens is both beautiful but also bitter, because I'm like, damn, I was here when I was born, you know? And like no one was putting a lens onto me then. So yeah, that's just what I think about. What are we gonna do to prevent the next great forgetting? What are we gonna do so that next time we talk about ball culture, you know that ball culture is still around, you know? Shut it out.
Well, and to kind of challenge what you're saying, I'm not disagreeing at all. I think media and culture and the entertainment aspect comes and goes in waves, right? The gay culture became really, really popular in the 80s, right? With Vogue, Madonna, she brought it to the forefront. It was not new. It was not new by any stretch of the imagination, but sometimes it just takes somebody in the limelight to bring that to the front. For example, Taylor Swift just had a ton of drag queens present on her stage. RuPaul's Drag Race. This is not RuPaul's first show. RuPaul was on TV in the 80s. And then what happens is people become numb to, people get bored with, and it starts to subside. It starts to dip down. And that's everything. That's not just queer culture. But I do agree. The forgetting is a horrible, horrible thing. However, as a member of the gay community, I think that's when we really like pull together and we're like, okay, bitch, what's next? Like, what are we gonna do next? That's when we refuel and we inspire again. The populace of the world has been taking from the gay community forever, in particular, the gay community of color, exceptionally them. And I think that the creative juices really get flowing when we're kind of pushed underground and we're stifled again. I think it's out of necessity. But then somebody kind of pokes their head around the corner into the dark back room and they're like, oh, I like what's going on over here. Let's bring it out. And there's a lot of controversy about that in the gay community. Some people celebrate it and they're like, yes, look at what we did. You even see this on Pose. Some people are like, yes, we're being celebrated. Some people are being, we're exploited.
But sometimes it's like, okay, now.
Right. I mean, sometimes,
okay.
right. Like Taylor Swift used her platform to bring, most recently Taylor Swift, that's why I keep referring to her, she used her platform to bring drag performers out into the forefront. She got backlash for that from our community because people are like, she's using us as a way to get attention. She's using us as a way to stay popular. That's exactly what Madonna did when Madonna found Vogue. You know what I mean? It's a double-edged sword, in my opinion. Yes, we want to be seen. Yes, we want to be heard. When is the time that the queer community gets credit for what we've done? That I don't have an answer for. I hope it happens. I really do, especially as more celebrities are coming out. As non-binary, as queer, as lesbian, as gay, as, you know, all of these things. I really hope that eventually we get credit for what our community has done. Because, I mean, beyond, you know, just entertainment, the fashion industry, name a designer that's not gay. You know what I mean? Honestly, at this point, like, come on. So I think it's important, but again, it is a double-edged sword. So I guess I don't really have an answer for that. It's just something that I roll around in my head a lot.
We're going to take a question from the audience.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bradley Haas. I'm from Beauty Beyond Drag Productions. I got Dice here. And I I don't have any questions for you. I just want to congratulate you all for doing what you're doing. And I think it's amazing. Thank you for all coming together and doing this. Thank you.
And honestly, thank you for what you're doing too, because you're helping bring drag performance both for drag queens who identify as the sex that they were born, as well as the transgender community. Because something that I really do want to make clear is that with drag is what you do. Trans is who you are. Now, you can absolutely be both. However, they are different. I am a performance artist. That's what I do. When I get home, I take all of this off and I live my life as a male. I maybe non-gender conforming. I will say that. However, I identify as male for the most part. But the transgender community has had some of the most amazing contributions to the drag performance scene. And that should never be overlooked. But I do want to make it very clear that at the end of the day, the difference between me and my friend here, Dice, is that I live my life as a male. Dice is male, period, point blank. Like, he is a male. And even though he says, you know, when he's performing, he's a drag king, it doesn't. Right. For simplicity's sake, absolutely. He's male. He's male. I consider him a male as male entertainer. That doesn't make him any less of an entertainer. He is one of the best male entertainers I've ever seen in my entire life, and I've been around for like 800 years. So, like,
That's 16 for me then.
You're 16 years in?
No? Oh, no.
Oh, gotcha. I was like, oh my God, no way. But yeah, so like, I do want to impose that our community is not like one or the other, or, you know, people confuse what I do with Dice's life experience all the time. I personally have no desire to be a woman. I do this as a job, as a performance art, as an improv form of art. Dice, at the end of the day, is Dice 24/7. But he's also an amazing entertainer. We've shared the stage countless times. I love it.
I would like to say, too, that the beauty beyond drag and brunch crowds, as much as they are cliquey in that, we do not hate each other.
No.
Believe it or not. Like, I get along great with drag brunch. Yeah. Or else I would.
You were there today.
Girl, I went.
It was great to see you.
Today.
Yeah, girl, she looked good too.
Yeah.
Oh,
thank you.
No, absolutely. I mean, there's no. We have enough ugly coming from the outside. We don't need to beat each other up at the end of the day.
We're all family
Yeah.
at the end of the day, and that's what it comes down to. Is that we all know what we're all doing, and we're all there for each other. Right.
So before because we are going to have to wrap it up a little bit, and I want everybody to be able to have a couple questions if you have any in the audience. Sarah, we have left you completely untouched at the end of the panel.
Hi, Sarah.
I want to just lean on you as our resident film expert. Everyone who doesn't know, she teaches film at Grand Valley, also at Compass Film Academy, also just got married. Life is just, she's killing it lately. But you also have a master's in screenwriting. So a lot of,
Electra says word.
So this goes back to something very early on that we kind of hit on in the panel that I'll wrap it up with this with one technical question for you, and then we'll go to the audience. But it seems to me narratively, Dia, you mentioned in the second season, the sort of how would we call it in like screenwriting words, kind of the big bad, right? It goes from being interpersonal drama to more being the way that the outside would see the interior of ball culture, right? So this, to me, really kind of this storytelling device, this narrative idea of taking it from being a person, someone can be personified, an evil, I guess. Again, these are all terms that I'm using as like narrative devices, but to take it from a person and to have it be more of an institution or an idea of people, or worse than that, the idea that people have of you, right? Like the misconceptions. This, to me, seems very similar to what Orange is the New Black did, where halfway through their series, they kind of took it away from being oh, this person in the other prison is my like, big bad for the season, and they made the prison industrial complex kind of the big evil towards the end of the series, and that's what everyone was fighting against. When we talk about that, and we talk about media as escapism, what is it that you find, Sarah specifically, but then also responses, what is it that you find is different when we're talking, because this is a fictional show. It's based in a real world, but much like Orange is the New Black, it's a fictionalization of someone's real lived experience, right? So when we talk about that as a storytelling device of trying to kind of push past a personification of a bad person into institutions and stuff like that, how do you feel like media has moved forward? Because when we look at, even like a Will and Grace, that although it's having a resurgence with the new seasons and stuff, that came about in a time where it was much more the Thursday night Friends kind of, multicam show that isn't going to be something that maybe anybody necessarily takes seriously. So when they did have, there were episodes of Will and Grace where Will almost seemingly forgot that AIDS existed. You know what I mean? And that was even like a punchline because there was a storyline with that. So when we talk about media that, while it is a form of escapism, is actually rooted in reality and real things. We look back and we see Trump Tower in the pilot of this show. How do you feel media has stepped in 2019 and as an evolution of shows like this that while mainly are drama, do have bits of, kind of comedy or, just joy that these characters find, and I guess, can you relate that to like just how media is these days? That was a really long question, but I feel like you can decipher it.
That was a long question, but there's a lot to unpack there. So I want to bring it back to my experience of watching this show, and I love that everything that has been touched on with this, and it actually just kind of summed up everything that I want to say. So going into watching Pose for me, I mean, I'm a cis woman, I'm white, clearly very privileged, and I am honored to be able to be on this panel today. More so, like, I really just love hearing everything that you guys are saying. It's fantastic. So watching Pose, when I heard about it and everyone's raving about it, I was a little apprehensive because of, I think Electra maybe you brought up, showcasing drag culture in a light that's more like putting it, I don't know, on display, like not really appreciating it. And I'm not here to bash RuPaul's Drag Race, but I appreciate it, but I do worry, is this just kind of putting it in a bad light of like the clowning concept, Right. So when I went to watch Pose, I'm like, oh my gosh, please don't do this. I don't know enough about drag culture. I can't speak to it that heavily, but I was really worried that that's the road it was going to go down. And when I watched it, oh my gosh, I haven't had a show bring me to tears like that in a long time. It resonated, and it just made me want to go research the hell out of drag culture and trans culture and everything. And it's so heartbreaking and so inspiring. So my bottom line is this show is incredibly important for the sake of archiving this history, preserving it, and boosting that signal. So to speak to kind of the narrative of it, and I'm glad you brought up like Orange is the New Black and what they did there, I think that there are two parts of it. So you have the first season that's getting on this personal level, and we need to understand these characters as the humans that they are, even though it's fictional, but really understand their life. And it just feels natural that then the next step is to make it a more broad issue that they're battling. But I think that it's also, it's very historically accurate that these are issues that were dealt with in that time, but I think that it's also a parallel to what we're dealing with right now in our culture. So it's almost like this capsule of time is kind of a metaphor, if you will, to what we're dealing with our current government, with the current society, current culture, everything that's going on. You feel like there's this uprising, there's kind of a pushback from the government, you have this battle going on. So I think that that's why Orange is the New Black shifted to that, and I think that it's appropriate that Pose is shifting to that too, that it's kind of a commentary on that. So I think that this show is important with not only the archiving, but the like cultural commentary that it has, the subtext of it too. I just think it's so fascinating and so inspiring, and it does elicit some guilt, and I am going to donate some money. And I think I think that this helps to bring awareness of all of these issues, and I love a show that's educational. I think you also mentioned the escapism of shows, and I think we can all agree, like, you go to a movie because you want to escape. That's why comedies are popular. We watch TV because we want to escape. Sometimes we watch dark stuff. Maybe that helps us get the emotions out. This show is interesting because it's not so much escapism as like just awe and appreciation and just, I don't know, inspiration and knowledge. So I am just blown away by the quality of the show, and I really hope that more people go watch it. I hope it doesn't fall under the radar. I want people to watch it. It's so accessible and so fantastic.
So I am a film and video major, and I actually have most of my film experiences in trans cinema. I studied under Kale Keegan, who is one of the leading trans scholars in the country, specifically around trans cinema. And I thought I would have a lot to say, but then I realized that I would rather hear listener questions, so I'm just going to tease you like that and give you absolutely no answer, and instead see what y'all have to ask.
Also, I'd like to note that Kale is moderating the teeth discussion also that's happening with...
Is he here right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He owes me a mattress topper, so I'm going to have to go over there.
He brought it with him. It's in my pants.
Oh, shit. Oh, that's all the padding. Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, any questions for our panel?
So question, do you guys ever plan to participate or kind of like go to a ball to see how everything is working nowadays?
I haven't gone in a long time, but I have gone. I did not walk because I was a scared little boy in heels back then. I would love to do it again. As time has gone on, I have also found multiple mothers. I consider myself a queen with 3 mothers. One of them, I'm sure you're aware of, Asio Aviance. Avi taught me, named after the House of Aviance, mind you, which is a ball house, taught me about ballroom culture. We attended together. I fell in love. That's what sparked my passion for drag. The creativity that was in there, I hope I just got a touch of that in what I do on stage. I would love to go again. Baby, the next time you go, let a bitch know. I'm coming.
We going.
Seriously.
It's in 2 weeks in Detroit.
Yes.
When?
The 14th or the 15th is in
I think
Detroit.
it's the 15th.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I'm in it. Let's go.
For
Let's
me,
go.
I've done it once, and I will say I went to a mini ball last year in January at Lansing. Spyro held one where Naomi was there, and she was judging, and I went out for my first category, and I ended up, getting 10, so I'll leave it at that until I go back again. But I do want to do it again. 10s are very, yes, 10s are good. If you get 10s across the boards, if you got this whole line of judges, and they all give you 10s, you the shit. Like, you the shit. You might as well just go sit down, go ahead and get your grand prize trophy, whatever. But like I said, I did it once. It was fun. It was great to express something new and different other than, doing drag, because drag and ballroom are different, but it's a little similar in some ways. But I'm down. I want to do it again. I wanted to get into a house and just to get the feel of it, just to see how it is.
You said 14 and 15 in Detroit?
I think it's the whatever weekend in 2 weeks is on that Saturday.
Finn, what day is that?
I was going to say, I thought that was the 16th.
16?
November 16th.
Finn, could you check in the calendar what day that is?
We got it.
Okay, good.
November 16th.
I've been trying to get to Detroit for another reason, if I can smash those 2 together. So if that answers your question, I would love to go to any drag ball. If anybody's like, do you want to go to a drag ball? I'm like, oh, what? Yeah. But specifically, I would love to, if I had a choice and I had all the money in the world, I would go to a drag show in Colombia. Colombia has a weirdly large drag, not weirdly, but a surprisingly large drag ball community. And I'm Latinx. I would love to literally just go there and see, what are they doing? What does drag look like when you take it out of the American lens and you look at it through, what are other people doing with drag in other countries, in other spaces, and especially as it relates to my own experience, I would love to see that.
I think they have ballroom there too.
Yeah, that's what they have them everywhere else. I mean, Paris, Italy,
the Netherlands,
everywhere.
I'm about to piss my pants. I'm like, so happy.
I just feel like, I mean, everything in this world is possible. Like, when you have drag, ballroom, any of that stuff, it's possible. It's out there. It's just certain people are so close-minded that they don't see it. You know, and when you do see it, they get scared and intimidated because they're, well, what's this? What's that? My thing is, if you're wondering and if you are so eager to know, search it. Yeah. Search it, look it up, read upon it, and understand it. And then once you get the idea of what you've read, look and find somebody who is within that, field and ask them more questions. Don't try to be more of daggering of, I need to know, I want to know. I just would like to know, I read upon this, I read upon that, and I guarantee you, whoever you're talking to or asking, their mind and heart is so open, they want to answer your question. That's what we eager for people to ask us questions, rather than assuming and having assumptions of what they think in their mind is what we're doing every day within our lives. We express our feelings totally different how everybody else express their feelings, but yet we do it because we want the world to be open. We want everybody to be equal. We want everybody to look at the next person and say, you may not look like me, but we're the same person. Why? Because we're human. We have the same heart. We have the same mind. Let's bring that together and let's make this world one big, better place, so that way you don't have to be afraid to go outside and walk alone, even though you should never walk alone. Always have a person with you, but still, you should never have that thought in your mind saying, all right, about to head outside. Let's see what I can get into today. Let's see who's going to be disrespectful to me today. Let's see who I can say hi to and who the next person can look and say, what is that? We go through that every day, and yet nobody knows what we go through because they never had that experience that we have. You can never say, I don't like you because you're colored. You can never look at a person and say they're colored, African American, a different descent. You can't look at a person and say, oh, what you're wearing, I can't take it. You've never worn that. You've never been a person of color. You've never been a trans person. So you can never say, I hate this or I dislike that. You've never been in that person's shoes because you don't know what that person has been through within their life. And going about that, that's where we all come back on supporting each other, guiding each other, lifting somebody up and saying, hey, I got you. You don't have to be afraid. I will walk with you wherever you need to go. And that way we can all be safe and protected within this world. It starts with one person. Just like that one person we have in office. It starts with him, and when whatever he says, certain people follow, right? So why can't we do the exact same thing? Let's be one big community and not be diverse, and let's all come together and say, hey, we're strong. We are here for you. We're going to do this, and we're going to push through. And we're going to make this world a better place that way. That is what everybody has been saying. Let's make this world a better place. And the only way we can do it is by putting our best foot forward and moving with life.
Well, I'm not from Grand Rapids. I'm from St. Joe Benton Harbor area. And they're just getting used to the gay community and being like, yeah, I'm super accepting of that. So I'm having troubles when I talk about the trans community. Would Pose be a good show to say, hey, watch this so you can relate in some? Or I worry that maybe, I don't know, how do I say this? That they might see us too much, or what are your views on people who aren't experienced because of the area in which I am? Would that be a good introduction, I guess?
Do you want my bitter trans person answer or my happy trans person answer?
Both.
My bitter trans person answer is that anybody who tries to understand you by consuming some piece of media will never understand you. The easier way to understand trans people is to talk to trans people, to read about what trans people experience, to directly ask them, because trans people literally, one trans woman's experience is going to be very different than another trans woman's experience. Trans people come in so many different forms, Like, what was your birth gender? Obviously, this doesn't matter to people outside, but like this does matter in the way that you have been trained to experience your community. Did you choose to medically transition or not? Did you choose to take hormones or not? Again, these aren't questions cis people should be asking us, but they're actual experiences that color like how you navigate through the world. A person who medically transitions will have a harder time going through TSA than a person who doesn't. A person who medically transitions will have a harder time going to the doctor because a lot of doctors will be like asking a lot of unnecessary questions in order to like go with their treatment. People who are designated female at birth will have a harder time accessing things like hysterectomies and birth control. So there's all these nuanced things that you can never, ever, ever understand by watching a show. The better thing to understand is there's very different trans people, and the better way to understand them is to ask every single trans person and never, ever, ever make an assumption. My happy answer is, yeah, sure, have them watch it.
Yeah, because I guess what I'm trying to get across is it's kind of isolated. We don't have any drag scene, so and trans people are not necessarily out and accessible.
I'm out.
Should that be? Yeah.
Same.
So come to my town, but like for my coworkers when we get into our arguments and stuff, I don't want to speak for the trans community, and there's not necessarily a lot available. There's barely anything for the gay lesbian community where I'm at.
Yeah.
So
Do you
in that sense is pose like a good segue, I guess, into that?
I think she's asking,
Like,
are you
for them to
basically saying,
watch,
like, would my
to get-
grandfather who watches Fox News potentially be
Right,
enlightened
he's not
by
as
watching?
angry.
Right,
Less
right.
angry grandpa.
Sure. But like, would somebody who maybe has
Like
no
libertarian.
concept of the
I'm
culture?
like,
I wouldn't say make the media or the TV for them to go and get an idea of what trans is or what other, culture or whatever they're looking for. I would just say that could be an opener for them to watch. It can open them up to understand a little bit, but it's not going to get them the full definition of what a trans person goes through. So if they are talking a certain talk about trans or gays or lesbians or whatever, everybody has their opinion, but you can't say certain things if you never had that experience, if you've never been able to talk to somebody about something, or if you've never been able to watch anything. You can't say anything on that unless you go have that opportunity to go watch it, and then have an opportunity to ask questions without being so vulgar with it, or without being so assumption with something. Just be open-minded, but be very soft with it. If that makes sense. Bradley, yes.
What was your life opening up to your family?
What was my life like? That's a good question. I came out as I was 19 years old, out of high school. Everything. Growing up, I was hiding. I knew who I was when I first found out who I was, and that was could have been 5, 6, 7 years old. Not knowing what I wanted to be, but I had a feeling of what I was. Yeah, I knew what I was born as, but that's not what my mindset was telling me. That's not what my body was giving me. So elementary, middle, high school, I was quiet. I was very hiding behind a lot of things. I was showing people what they wanted to see. So dating, certain boys or whatever, wanted to dress in certain areas that I didn't want to dress, but they wanted to see. But as I got out of high school and got an idea of that I had my own mindset, and I opened up to my mom, it was a shocker to her. It was not a shocker to my family because they all really knew, but it was still a shocker because it's like, we just didn't expect you to be out like that, and it was tough. I got it tough for my mom. It was hard for my family to cope with certain things and to understand it. But as times went on and I still went and was finding myself, I had to take myself away from my family for about a year. And not saying that that's what I wanted to do, but I needed to do because I needed to find who I was. Instead of listening to them saying, oh, you need to read this verse in the Bible, look into this is what you need to read. No, that I know the Lord. I go to church. But my thing is, within this life, you have to live your life, not somebody else's. So I had to take myself out for a year. And as I came back in as being trans. And when I came back, yeah, it was still a little shocker. It was still rough. But as it gradually went on and I expressed who I was and I never shut myself out, my family started opening up more and seeing this is really you. This is who you are. I can't change that. I'm proud of you. I'm happy for you. So it went from being a little rocky, a little tough, trying to get them to understand, but I couldn't push them. You can't push somebody to call you something that they're not used to. So the only thing you have to do is show them your truth by living your life every day and not being shunned for it, not being non-confident. I'm very confident in myself, and I had to do that because I had to take myself away from my family just for that. And not saying that I did it because I didn't love them. I love my family with all my heart, and I would do anything for them. But my thing is, I had to find who I was. And once I did, they obviously opened up and seen who I was, and now they love it. They can't stop expressing themselves. They can't stop. They want to come to my shows. Last night, I had my auntie and my uncle out, and I didn't even know that they were there, but they stayed for the whole show. And by seeing them and seeing the other people I went to school with and hearing the remarks that they had, it's amazing to me because it's showing me that I'm living my life the way I want to live it and not having somebody tell me how to live my life. So if you're living your life the way you want to, nothing and nobody in this world can shut you down, and nobody can tell you what to do, and you will not be able to listen to that person because you have your consciousness on your shoulders telling you what you need to do. And those are the right ones that you need to be listening to. And that's what I had to do. So by me having my experience and what I went through up until now, I'm able to express and help others with the exact same thing.
I feel like none of us can possibly or humanly follow that up. And I need to both
Right.
pee and cry.
I was just gonna say, I feel like that's a great place to end. And if you want to talk to any of our panelists, are you guys all hanging around for a little bit? Just afterward?
I have to pee.
A little bit. So catch them while you can, and thank you for coming to our wonderful panel discussion. And we'll actually be having another, we had so many things, so many slides. This will actually be offered as a podcast episode for the Fountain Street Church podcast, so the audio will be available in the future. And in our next episode, we're going to be doing the Great British Baking Show and talking about the psychology of positive reality television. So thanks for coming. Have a great night. Go see Teeth.
Go pee. Oh, yes.